Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by the one and only Dan Larimer, probably one of the most revolutionary minds in cryptocurrency, the man behind BitShares, Steem, and Steemit, as well as the cryptocurrency we're about to talk about today, EOS. Thank you for joining us, Dan.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Now, EOS is exciting to me, and it's hard to get me really excited and hopeful over an ICO, but EOS appears to show one of the greatest potentials of any cryptocurrency out there going forward. It's known as the Ethereum killer and prides itself on being far more decentralized than other cryptocurrencies. Dan, for our audience, can you give us your pitch on why people should get involved in EOS and how it's better than, the countless other cryptocurrencies out there?
Well, EOS is all about my continuing mission to find free market solutions for securing our life, liberty, and property. So I believe blockchain technology is the future, and EOS is designed to be the most powerful, flexible, easy to use, best governed, most decentralized blockchain software on the market.
Well, I think it's got a lot of attention lately. It's been growing in leaps and bounds, and I was wondering how traceable is EOS and where is it in comparison with something like Monero when it comes to privacy? Because there are a lot of people concerned about theft. I mean, the tax man lately in the crypto space.
I recently made a blog post arguing that if we want freedom, we actually have to move toward complete transparency rather than complete privacy. And this is because of the information asymmetry between what the government knows about everyone else and what we know about each other. And if they can divide us and conquer, then they win. And I think the only way that we can actually protect our property rights and actually attain freedom is to create a small town on a global scale, which means effectively working to coordinate with each other through transparency to police the bad actors in our society. Because right now, if you get held hostage or whatnot, they can make off with your funds. Your computer can be hacked and they can demand a ransom to unlock it. These types of things can't happen if you have more transparency and the person has no place to take the money. So in the interest of protecting our property rights and self-defense, we need to take the transparent approach. You can run from government, but you can't hide.
It's been noticeable lately that, I mean, I've been a proponent of Bitcoin for a long time, but Bitcoin seems to be going in the opposite direction of where we thought it would go several years ago. And, a lot of a currency is based on, the demand, the application, the use, and of course, the scarcity. There's a lot of that with Bitcoin, but we've watched the application use drop out. And lately we've seen insane transaction fees and wait times. How can EOS solve that problem, which Bitcoin has not been able to solve?
Well, for starters, EOS is designed to process tens or hundreds of thousands of transactions, which increases the capacity, which will help keep the fees down. The second is that we don't charge fees at all. We do rate limiting, which means if you only transact periodically, you're always going to get your transaction through, and there'll still be no fees. And the network will never be so flooded that it will be unresponsive, which are problems with the fee model, is that anyone with enough money, about $250,000 a day, can completely shut down Ethereum just by fees alone, or at least raise the fees until no one can actually use it. So the model and the allocation of resource usage under EOS and Steemit completely changes the game in terms of ensuring access to the blockchain.
Absolutely. Well, something that people should remember is that you have to register your EOS by June 2018 when the ICO is finished, correct?
That is correct.
So how do people do that? They go to My Ether wallet? Is it a simple kind of registration, or?
All registration is just mapping your Ethereum address to a public key, and that's only required for Ethereum accounts that are either smart contracts or multi-sig accounts, or accounts which have never transacted before. But if we're better than safe than sorry. So if you want to know how to do that, visit our site, eos.io. There's instructions there. There's instructions on Steemit. I don't do that every single day, so I can't provide you step by
Yeah,
step.
no worries, no worries. Well, of course, I know that Exodus carries EOS, of course, my Ether wallet, etc. I don't see a lot of exchanges carrying it yet, which is surprising to me considering how big EOS is getting. What are some places that people can actually buy into EOS?
It's funny you say that there's not very many exchanges listing. If you go to coinmarketcap.com, you can look at all the different markets. You've got Bitfinex, Binance, Kraken. There's just a lot of really big, some of the biggest ones have listed us.
I've missed that. I'm looking at like Bittrex and places like that. I've been surprised that they haven't listed it yet, considering how big of a cryptocurrency it is. But I mean, just moving forward, Dan, there's a lot of potential for EOS. What do you think about people kind of shifting away from Bitcoin in the coming years to something like EOS, or shifting away from Ethereum to something like EOS? Do you think there's a lot of potential there because of the problems we're watching occur with a lot of these bigger cryptocurrencies?
I can tell you every serious project I've come across, they've tried to build on Ethereum and couldn't, and look at what we're doing, and they're optimistic that they'll be able to do what they want to do on our platform, and we're working with them to make sure that they can. So I'd say that there's a huge pent-up demand of people that want to build on blockchains. They've been trying to build on Ethereum, but just know that they can't, and now they're very excited that the EOS.io software will make that possible.
Absolutely. Well, how much, I know you've gone into this a bit, but how much of your inspiration comes from the need to eradicate collectivist rule over free individuals, also known as government, and how can the decentralized blockchain put an end to government force and central banking? Because I hear a lot of people talk about it, but it's hard to really find like a clear coercive explanation of how you can get rid of this massive authoritarian force that we're facing at a greater level all the time.
Well, for starters, you just don't get rid of something. That will create a vacuum. What you need to do is create a new nonviolent governance structure that respects the property rights of individuals. And those structures can be created within the current system, because the current system, as long as you've got free speech and you're not initiating violence or aggression against other parties, that's perfectly legitimate. So we're actually working on solutions at the governance layer with decentralized dispute resolution, identity, and a few other things that are going to provide reputation on the blockchain. And those reputation and identity will keep people honest. The cryptocurrency community needs to have an answer to the problems of what do you do about kidnappers? What do you do about extortionists? What do you do about stolen funds? How do you protect people's property rights in this new system? And if you don't have answers, then you've got this vacuum. And so the existing governments or violent-based governments are not going to be displaced until there is a nonviolent alternative that's created. And as far as I'm aware, we're the only ones in the industry that are pursuing a complete alternative to the governance question.
Yeah, we're seeing a massive monetary revolution that's nonviolent, which is a beautiful thing, and EOS has been something that's really gotten my hopes up in recent days. Watching it, I know a lot of people had some bearish signals with EOS when it first came out because they didn't listen to how it worked and how it was going to work, and they bought in at like $2.60 and it dropped to 50 cents or so. But now we're watching it boom above, I think, $11 at this moment, US dollars. It's climbing, and it's showing itself to be a much more powerful contender than a lot of critics claimed in the first place. But with that said, you talk about this power complex that we're facing off against, and what do you think when you see things like, banks or stock exchanges putting out ETFs on Bitcoin and stuff? Like, I find that after watching years of banks putting out ETFs on gold and silver and watching them hold the price down in an artificial bear market, that kind of worries me a bit going into the future. So what would you say if, the New York Stock Exchange said, well, we're going to put out ETFs on EOS? What would you say to that?
Well, all these systems, when they settle the contracts in something other than Bitcoin, no Bitcoin ever even needs to enter the hands of these people, because they're just speculating on the future value of a price feed published by a single entity. Mm-hmm. And that price feed is can be widely manipulated because there's no one price for Bitcoin. There's dozens of prices depending on where on the globe you are and the friction of moving money. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that it's good for Bitcoin. I think it's the first measure in attempting to absorb the demand for actual Bitcoin by giving people exposure to the price and therefore the gains and losses without actually having to own Bitcoin. And that's going to slow the growth and slow the rise of Bitcoin, and that's a problem. Now, how do you stop it? Well, you can't stop these types of things because it's just their freedom to contract. Unless the parties have agreed not to contract with other people in such a way, then that's the only way you can enforce it.
Yeah, I'm certainly not saying it should be banned or anything like that. As a voluntarist, I wouldn't advocate any kind of force, but it's an unfortunate reality that we're facing when these banks that have suppressed many assets over time are now suppressing or potentially suppressing Bitcoin. I've always said, once the banking system falls, like gold and silver will go up in value significantly due to the pressure of them pushing that beach ball underwater for so many years. But I guess the same could go for Bitcoin if they settle their many issues. But with that said, it's unfortunate to watch banks get involved. I know that it's a sign of the market growing, but at the same time, it's a sign of them wanting to suppress that market, which a lot of people are concerned about. But moving on from EOS, Dan, I can't go without mentioning Steemit today, because Steemit personally has changed my life. It's been one of the greatest things I've ever come across in the social media world when it comes to having an independent media and having it censored and demonetized by YouTube. Seeing Steemit come in at the perfect time. So I wanted to ask about Steemit a little bit. Can you give us your thoughts on the future of Steemit and how a blockchain-based social media can replace mainstream dinosaur social media?
Well, I think blockchain-based social media is the future of decentralized governance. The ability to communicate in public with authenticated statements and holding people accountable to what they said in the past, as well as the ability to monetize that through reward and incentive programs like you see on Steemit, creates the viral growth that brings all kinds of people on board that would otherwise have no way to get into crypto or even discover crypto. So I think Steemit and Steem are wonderful examples of how to onboard regular people into blockchain.
Yeah, I saw in the very beginning of Steemit, because I got on pretty much close to the beginning, and watching people doubt it and say it's a Ponzi scheme, it's this, it's that, and then watching it grow and all these same people going, man, I should have got in on that, because I personally put money into Steem, but you don't have to put money into Steem to make money on Steemit. And I find that it's quite incredible watching the growth over time. I would have expected it to be more at this point, but nonetheless, we're watching it grow at a large scale. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about, recently we've watched SBD, Steam-backed dollars, grow ridiculously high compared to what they're supposed to be pegged to. Do you think this is a problem for Steemit going forward?
Well, it's the market imbuing them with value as an independent currency. The Steem dollar was set as basically a floor on the value, which says it can be worth at least $1 worth of Steem. There is no upper limit, and because there's only so many Steem dollars created in order to pay content producers, and there's so much demand for it as just a currency, the Steem dollar is just another relatively fixed supply currency that's growing at a predictable rate. It just has the added benefit of a floor. It won't go below $1, so your losses are somewhat curbed. But at this point, last time I checked, it was like $14. Its price is almost entirely behaving like an independent altcoin in its own right, and that's great for the people who are producing content. It means the market is valuing those tokens very highly.
Well, I've seen
and therefore incentivizing more work.
I've seen a lot of people complaining about it lately, saying, "Oh, it doesn't make sense with the amount of value on said post from upvotes." And I'm just thinking, like, when I'm cashing out on what's supposed to be a $125 post, it's like $1,000, and I'm happy because I'm a content producer, and it's nice to make more money than it actually says I'm making. So I don't know why people are complaining so much, but I've also seen Steem has been skyrocketing lately. A lot of people have pegged it at possibly year-end $4.70 around that area from DMA mapping. But I mean, a couple months ago, people would laugh at that. But watching it grow, I'm looking at a possibility of maybe even $17 in the year 2018 at some point, which is huge. But how much of this is about the value, and how much of it is really about the application, and how important it is to have this currency that allows people on Steemit to grow their value by producing content?
Well, there's so much demand for cryptocurrencies, and there's so much people are really experiencing the pain of fees. People don't realize that Steem is a really amazing cryptocurrency. It's the only blockchain that's got hacked account recovery, which means that even if someone gets your active key, you can cooperate with Steemit or whoever your recovery provider is and get your account back. There's just so many features that make it a great currency that it's got huge potential from that alone. And then the fact that there's rewards for the community just means that there's lots of natural organic viral growth of the ecosystem. Steemit is now one of the top 2,000 websites in the world, and that's just Steemit. There's many other websites that are cloning the content of the Steem blockchain, which is really causing it to grow, and it shows you the power of what can happen when you redirect the inflation caused by mining into producing something of lasting value. And the content that Steem's producing is lasting value, whereas proof of work is not lasting value. And I think that makes all the difference.
Well, going forward from Steemit, I mean, where do you see it going in the next few years? I've seen the smart media tokens and all that. It seems like there's an insane potential with Steem and Steemit that's currently untapped. Where do you see that going in the future?
I have no idea where Steemit's going in the future, but the industry as a whole is only going to continue to grow as blockchains become legitimized by things like trading on Wall Street and the higher valuations. I really just see this technology changing every single multi-user business.
Yeah, it's I find it interesting how humble you are after creating something that very well could be the future of social media, and being involved in EOS and BitShares. It's just not very many people have had the kind of resume that you have, and I'm sure you're creating more stuff as we speak. Is there anything you're working on right now that isn't yet released to the public?
Well, yes, there's lots of things that are going on behind the scenes that are incredibly exciting. There's a lot of things that people don't realize that we're doing with EOS. For example, we recently added support for the Touch ID and Face ID on Apple's Secure Enclave, so your private keys. Every iPhone and MacBook Pro is a hardware biometrically secured wallet. And those types of things will improve the security and safety of blockchains. We're working with a lot of big players behind the scenes, and expect a lot of news in the month ahead.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm always paying attention, Dan. I really appreciate you joining us today. Can you just give us quickly some websites that we can go to for my viewers to get involved?
Yeah, visit eos.io and steemit.com/@eosio for our blog. And those two sites are where everything is. If you sign up to our mailing list, that's the best way to stay informed of the major announcements. So please sign up. You don't want to miss anything.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the Anti-Defamation League comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at Steemit.com. That's Steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post via Steem, the cryptocurrency. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And don't forget to come on down to Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico in February, one of the best events of the year, and you can save money on your tickets by typing in promo code WAM. That's WAM. We'll leave the link below for you, and until next time, don't forget to subscribe. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.